This episode brought to you by Cafe Imports, Minneapolis-based importers of fine specialty green coffees. Independently owned and operated since 1993, Cafe Imports has been dedicated to decreasing its impact on the earth through renewable energy, carbon neutrality, and by supporting conservational efforts in places where quality coffee is grown and also where quality coffee is consumed. Where does your coffee come from? Welcome to the Lake Superior Podcast. I'm Walt Lindala.
And I'm Frida Waara. We are made stronger by story, and there's no better source than the continent's largest body of fresh water, Lake Superior.
So join us as we highlight the 5 national parks that ring this greatest of the Great Lakes, meet the people, tour the places, and learn about the projects that make these parks and body of water so remarkable.
This podcast made possible with the support of the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation and Media Brew Communications.
I'm Walt Lindala.
And I'm Frida Waara.
And we are back with another season of the Lake Superior Podcast. Lots of fun things we're talking about this time around. And then also we're following up with some of our favorite folks from the first season of the podcast. And we're doing that today.
Absolutely. Well, out of those 5 national parks that ring Lake Superior, certainly the one that everyone talks about is Isle Royale. And today we get to chance to chat with Denice Swanke, and she's superintendent at Isle Royale. And what a season. Denice, what a season. I mean, I've never felt the lake so warm in my life.
Yeah, welcome back, Denice. Good to have you on. And here it is. What a season it's been. I mean, what can you tell us just kind of off the bat with looking back on this summer season and everything in this fall right now? What's your thoughts?
Well, thank you for having me back. I know we talked a lot about skiing. I think last time it must have been in the winter, but it's good to hear your voices. And yeah, I made it through my first season on Isle Royale. It's been just over a year that I've been here now, and yeah, there wasn't a lot of downtime. Maybe that's the best way to characterize my first summer on the island.
One of the things that we've kind of talked about around here is that might not have the data for it, but felt like one of the warmest summers on record for the lake. And the question is did that have any impacts or effects at Isle Royale?
It's kind of a funny question when you talk about how warm the lake was. I started swimming in the lake in late April when I got out there, but I will caveat that by saying it wasn't intentional. I was learning how to paddleboard, and I had a few spills, and I did not yet have a new wetsuit. It hadn't arrived, so it was a brisk introduction to swimming in the lake. But I like you say, I don't have the data on it, but I definitely was hearing from a lot of our long-term staff that throughout the summer how hot and dry. And I think there was one stretch where we went something like 6 weeks without any precip, which is, as I'm out there for my first year, thinking about all the things you hear about Isle Royale, one of the things you hear is don't forget your raincoat because it rains every day. Mm-hmm. That definitely was not my experience this first year, but one of the upsides is it was a reasonably good year in terms of not being harassed by lots of flying, biting things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was nice, and the swimming was quite good. So, but yeah, everything was really dry. It was not a good year for blueberries, for example. Raspberries were okay. Thimbleberries were good. It's always a short season, but we really felt that the hot and dry.
Well, first I want to congratulate you for learning how to paddleboard and learning on Lake Superior. Mm-hmm. So good for you, girl. And I'll tell you, you probably have the record for getting back on that board once you do fall off. And it was just probably like instant when that water is cold. But, it's that 6-inch fin that hangs down. And sometimes you don't realize because you're so mesmerized, the point of view from the paddleboard looking down on the water. And then all of a sudden, if that fin gets hung up on, one of those nasty little rocks along the shoreline because, you're not going to find a lot of sandy beach at Isle Royale. That's one of the challenges. But
well, you're making me feel much better for that first time or two. My fin hit the rock. I thought I was the only one who had that experience.
Oh, man.
So.
We don't think behind us that much. So, yeah, it's funny how that happens. But, what I did learn, and I spent a lot of time in the lake this year, was that even coves on Lake Superior, they were getting some algae blooms, or there was some swimmer's itch. And you had some challenges, I think, on some of the inland waters at Chicken Bone with some that, algae that, or whatever it is, that little critters that wouldn't even be boiled away. I wondered how that impacted some of the hikers looking for fresh water.
Yeah, it certainly was a challenge. I want to credit our staff. We're out doing a really good job and collecting information also from people who were coming back in on their trips. But we were pretty active in terms of making that information as widely available as we could, whether that was just through the permit process and verbally letting folks know. But there's also signage and website information, because it would change, right? Sometimes we'd get a staff member who'd come back and say, hey, there's an algal bloom on Lake Ritchie. And then we'd get, happily, maybe we'd have a rain event, and then the bloom would clear up for a while. And so that was, I don't know if that's been the norm in years when we've had quite a few blooms, if they come and go that frequently. But that was one of the surprises for me, was there were a few of the lakes that it was on again, off again, off again, on again.
Well, I'm sure that there were challenges that also came with it being better weather, which probably also means that it brings maybe more people wanting to visit, or at least they wanted to come and see it. How did that all shape up? I mean, how was your numbers of visitors? How was the staff able to handle it all?
The visitation was definitely up in, I would say, probably June, July, and August. I don't have September numbers yet, but I can say, I'm just going to cheat and look at a spreadsheet here real quick. I think for June, July, and August, the numbers are up a little bit each month over what I have a 9-year data set from 2012 to 21, and in each of those months, it was a little higher than it had been, whatever the previous peak was. Not hugely, maybe a couple hundred people higher. I'm looking at August, just for example. The highest visitation year was 2018 at 6,300 visitors, and this year we had 6,400. So up a little. You do feel that. The staff at the visitor center, really on the front line of everything, are the folks who really feel it. They're the ones dealing with the questions. They're also the ones, unfortunately, most often on the front line when there's complaints about maybe campsite overcrowding or something like that. So our staff do an amazing job of trying to navigate those difficult situations. But it's, as I understand it, a trend that the park has seen. Prior to the pandemic, there was the same trend in increasing visitation that's picked right back up now. And we've got some real issues to deal with in terms of what's the capacity? How many people can we actually have on the island? Just because there are new visitors, new demographics, and not all of the newer folks to Isle Royale have the same kind of experience to prepare them for maybe backcountry camping or backpacking, or what does portaging mean, and what kind of supplies do I need to have with me for an extended trip in the backcountry. So we're seeing an uptick of the visitor complaints and just congestion issues in the busiest campgrounds like Wendigo, Rock Harbor, Daisy Farm, 3 Mile, I would say. But also some not good trends in terms of folks not quite being as prepared as they need to be. And I think trip preparation is something that we talked about on our last chat, and definitely is something we're going to be digging into a little bit this winter. If there's anything that we can do differently or better to help make sure, like if if you want to learn how to backpack and you're committed to doing that at Isle Royale, let's make sure that you're hiking with someone who isn't in that same category, right? Who has the experience and can help make sure that you bring all the right things that you need to have a great trip and a great experience. So those are some of the busy things that we saw. We also saw, a lot of private boaters, and I don't have any statistics on that yet, but it sure seemed like there were some different user groups than what the park has seen in the past.
We're talking with Denice Swanke today, who is superintendent of Isle Royale National Park on the Lake Superior podcast. Denice, one of the big news items, of course, that came out of Isle Royale this year was the Horn Fire, August 10th. And that's nothing that you really want to hear, I would imagine. But tell us a little bit about August 10th, how we got to the Horn Fire, how things are going with that.
Sure. I don't remember August 10th so much as I think it was a few days later, and definitely like the week of, I'm going to say August 20th, when things really got exciting. But I think, Isle Royale is a wilderness park, and fire can be a real benefit in terms of the ecosystem and having some diversity on the vegetation and clearings and things like that. So it's not, I don't think it's a bad thing in any sense, but it is certainly not common in recent history to have wildfires at a Isle Royale just because of that normal precipitation patterns. But it was hot and dry, and so when we got some lightning come through, we did pick up, I don't remember what the final number was. I'm going to say 2 or 3 fires from lightning, or at least some strikes, lightning strikes that we can definitely point to. The Horn Fire is still going. I just got some photos, or a photo today, that still shows it. It's not going in the sense of open flame or anything, but it's just smoldering, and that's the expectation that it will continue to do that really until, hopefully, really until there's some significant, not just precipitation, but I would say snow that's going to stay on the ground for a while. So we won't be able to call it out until next spring when we get back out on the ground and can say, yep, it's finally done smoking. But it's pretty interesting. It was eye-opening in a lot of ways. There's a lot of good work that went on around the Tobin Harbor and Rock Harbor area to make sure that we're better prepared if, in fact, we do have another hot and dry year in the next few. Then we've got structures as protected as they can be and things like that. So Denice, I don't know how much more you want to talk about. I can talk about this one all day.
I bet. I'm just thinking right now, it's really difficult. Communication at Isle Royale is really tough. And you've got backpackers who on their itinerary, they're in that certain area. How do you get out there? I mean, obviously some of them saw the fire too, because, when it's traveling down those fingers, it's pretty obvious, and anybody that's got any height can start to see smoke. But just, was there a big concern that somebody could get trapped out in, an area where the fire going, say, down one of those fingers? That was my immediate thought.
Oh, sure. No, it's a great question. And we were really fortunate, I would say, in the fact that when the fire started on August 10th, and for really 5, 10, 12 days, it was really just doing what it's doing right now, kind of really slow moving, and there wasn't really any danger because there was no wind driving it. And so we had the opportunity to immediately go through the backcountry permits, find out who was where, get signs out, get people, our own staff out on the trails. We had some volunteers who were stationed over on Amygdaloid this year, the Triggs. I know they were part of that wave that got out and just hiked anywhere near the fire, made sure that there was nobody in the area, and placed up closure signs and things like that. So So we did both the educational side of informing people on the website and on the trail closure signs and on shelters and things like that, as well as the physically going out on the ground and looking for folks and helping make sure that there wasn't anybody there, so that if conditions changed, which they did do, we knew with a fairly high degree of confidence that there was nobody around.
And what a testimony to a veteran backpacker who really puts down the seriousness of having that itinerary and understanding that, you do need to be responsible for saying you're going to be where you're going to be. And of course, things can happen, but, when you're kayaking it, we know weather rules. Lake Superior's the boss, no matter what. But it's just as important to make sure that you on those trails. Well, good for you. I can't imagine. And hats off to your staff. That's just
yeah.
We're talking with Denice Swanke today, who is superintendent of Isle Royale National Park. Let's shift gears a little bit here, Denice. We're talking about at this time of year, a lot of people are getting their camps and cottages kind of winterized up and closing them up. How do you shut down a national park for the winter season?
It's a really good question. It's probably a lot of the same kinds of checklists that you would go through for shutting down a cabin. You just have to scale it up a little bit. We basically have three small towns out on the island, and then in terms of Wendigo and Rock Harbor and our administrative facility at Mount Island, as well as some of the outlying areas. And so I would say we get through July, and a lot of our staff, at least at Mount Island, start thinking about the shutdown. I had somebody ask me earlier today, "Are you guys starting to shut down for the year, Denice?" And I said, "Oh no, we're actually finishing in a few days. We started back in August." And they laughed. I said, "No, that's for real. It takes that kind of long-term thinking to be able to reverse everything that we go through in the late spring in terms of the opening process. So it's really just contracting all of those operations and shutting down facilities as you go in a systematic way. It's also, things like pulling all of the boats out of the water. That has to happen on a fairly rigorous basis in terms of multiple boats per day for starting in late August, or you don't have enough days to get them all out because we're dealing with employee boats as well as the priority being the park boats that we have. So it's pretty involved when we have to empty the dumpsters, and then of course we want to get them put back out there so they're ready for spring, and we've got water systems to shut down and housing and offices to shut down, anything that'll freeze. One of the other things that was really good for me to see this year as another example of the shutdown, we were working on a little administrative cabin that we have there on Mount Island. It's used for kind of transient use for staff who maybe need to come out for 2 or 3 days and then come back to the mainland. So that we had projects set aside and some funding to do some pretty major overhaul on that building. Well, thankfully, the folks who were responsible for that at this time last year were making the list of what needed to be ordered and everything. That's how far in advance we have to be thinking. So in September of 2021, we have to be making those supply and material order lists, because those things have to be ordered over the fall and winter, especially right now, and that's what we were seeing happen this past spring with all the supply chain issues that we're all experiencing. We would maybe place an order that you'd normally expect to have new windows arrive in a maybe 4-week time period from the time you order them to the time they actually arrive out there at the island. Well, this year it was more like 4 months in some cases, or maybe not at all,
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting that to realize that that's part of your shutdown process, is making sure that you are taking note of what you have to have put in place over the winter to be able to open back up in the spring and to be able to accomplish the work that's expected the following, maybe not until late summer, but you better be working on it during shutdown. So
island life, right? Island life.
Yes.
And for folks who don't understand, it's, a 6-hour boat ride to get out from the canal in Houghton out to the island, and that's to Rock Harbor. It's a little bit shorter if you're going to make the trip from Grand Portage to Wendigo. That's just basically about 45 minutes, I think, maybe an hour. And speaking about that, will you still have a cabin at Wendigo open in the winter for winter study? Is it going to be in Wendigo? And I guess, first of all, are we going to have winter study?
Yeah, that's one of the things that one of our staff, at least, was working on last week, was making sure that facility that gets used during winter study was set up and kind of preloaded, like with firewood and things like that, so that it was all in place. But yeah, there will be winter study this year, and so we're looking forward to sometime this spring having additional information about population counts for wolves and moose.
We're talking with Denice Swanke, who is the superintendent of Isle Royale National Park here on the Lake Superior podcast. I'm Walt Lindala. Over there is Frida Waara. Denice, I guess that kind of leans into the next question. I mean, is there any particular thing maybe you can share with us about the wolf relocation efforts? We've heard some reports of possibly new pups. I mean, it's still, I realize, kind of early, but what can you tell us about the wolf, the moose population, any of those plans, and maybe some results?
I have most of those same questions. So unfortunately, that's all I can say is since we didn't have winter study last year for the first time in decades, we were able to do a little bit of work this spring, and I have not yet seen the results of that. So I don't have any of the genetic information or anything to share quite yet, but I know it's something that folks are very interested in, and we'll look forward to getting a press release together and sharing that information. I'm not sure if that would be before or after winter study, as I'm getting ready to see how that all unfolds.
Well, go.
Do you think there will be a chance to relocate any more wolf pups, or not pups, but wolves? Is that on the table for discussion at all?
Yeah, it is it is something that we'll be discussing this winter for sure. The environmental impact statement that was done that led to the decision to do the wolves that have been brought out already includes an opportunity for, I believe, one more round of that work. So that is one of the things that I have on the agenda for for this fall, is getting together with relevant folks to understand what the needs might be, and that genetic information is one of the pieces to the decision-making process about whether we'll make an additional effort to bring in more animals or not.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the winter agenda, the fall-winter agenda. What's in the works that you are looking to get done, and hopefully at least having some updates as we move into the winter months?
Sure. We're, like I said, working a lot on shutdown right now, and then we have not so much for the fall, but in the winter months, we're going to be doing a strategic plan process. I'm not sure if we're going to go for a 3-year window or a 5-year window, but we do anticipate digging into a number of issues and setting those priorities on the agenda for the next several years. So I think that's going to be an exciting and certainly challenging thing for us to be working on.
Well, everybody loves strategic planning. Come on. But it's an important part of it. I mean, you have to get all that done. You're talking so much, Denice, today about pre-planning and looking ahead, and you have to be ready for obstacles and challenges and successes and all of that. I mean, are there particular things maybe that you're looking forward to that we can maybe look forward to into next year? I mean, are there certain things that we'll see that maybe are, a bright spot on the horizon for you guys at Isle Royale National Park?
I think one of the exciting things that is going to be highly visible, although I don't know how exciting it will be to people other than those who use it all the time. But I'm excited that there's been a major dock rehabilitation, basically a rebuild in Rock Harbor at the main dock the Ranger 3 uses. And that work is wrapping up right now as we speak, and I think there'll be a little bit left to finish in the spring. But I've seen some photos yesterday, and it really looks great. It's an improvement on many, many levels. So that is something that we've needed for a long time, and I really appreciate all the good work that's gone into that. So I think I've mentioned with you guys previously just a lot of emphasis on some of our infrastructure and deferred maintenance needs. So that's one that's going to be finished this spring, which is really exciting, and always opportunity for work on the trail systems. We talked earlier today about the Horn Fire, and one of the things that fire crews who we had out in the park this year were doing was trying to dust off their crystal ball and say, okay, what do we need to be doing right now so that these trails are in the best shape possible for visitors next spring and summer? Where do we need to be clearing trees and doing work around the campgrounds that might have been influenced by the fire, for example? So there was a lot of really great work done. And yeah, as Frida mentioned, we're not in control, right? Mother Nature does what she's going to do. So just like with all of our docks and campgrounds, we're going to be getting back into the areas that were influenced by that fire and making sure that they're safe and that we don't have any unforeseen problems. So those are some of the immediate things that we'll be focusing on. And, frankly, we're still looking at coming out of the shutdown from the pandemic in 2020. And we talked about like a walk, crawl, run is how we have to approach whatever our new normal is. And so we've done that in 2021 with our staffing still having some limitations in terms of the availability of housing and things like that. But we got back into walking in 2020. We think 21 we were crawling. I don't know if we'll be running in 2022 or if we'll be maybe jogging slowly. But we're building that new normal and learning what we can do and how, in some cases, we do things differently. But I know for all of the visitors and most of the staff that I engaged with this summer out at the park, it was just such an incredible place to be. And whether your opportunity to be there is virtual or an hour or a day or a season, it has a really powerful impact on people. So that's something we can always look forward to.
There's a question that ties right into that. Is it too early to book for next year? Is it time to be thinking about that for people that want to do a visit?
Oh, I don't think it's too early. I know when I was talking to the Rock Harbor Lodge manager at one point this summer, he mentioned that he was already getting people booking for 2022. So I know every tour operator has certainly different guidelines. I'll probably get it wrong, but I think for Ranger 3 reservations, it's sometime around the first of the calendar year when they start taking reservations. So just have to check with individual operators to see what their policies are and when they'll take reservations. But it's never too early to plan a trip, in my mind.
Absolutely. And never too early to sling that backpack on with a couple of pounds in there just to see what it's like. Because I know a lot of folks, they think, oh, Denise, they think it's nothing for me to walk from Rock Harbor to, and understanding that it's like lava rock. It's a very different place to hike.
It is not somewhere that you just kind of go. I mean, you talked earlier about people showing up that maybe aren't as prepared as they could be. That's a little troubling, but it's important to make sure that you take the steps to get yourself properly prepared.
Did the Horn Fire take out any shelters anywhere? Do you have to go back and rebuild any of those?
No. It didn't. It took out. There was one outhouse that was lost.
Oh, see, now that's important right there. So it is. Denice.
Watch your step.
Denice, as we wrap up here with you here today, question is: do you have a memorable story? Something happened this season that you really you're gonna hold near and dear? I guess, good or bad, with everything that happened. I mean, what is a memorable story you can share with us from the season?
Boy, there's so many, but I would say I had the chance in, I'm not going to remember exact dates, but we'll say mid-June. We had 2 folks from our Washington office and 2 folks from our regional office in Omaha who had a trip planned for a couple of years, and it finally happened this June. And it was just fortuitous. For me, being new to the island, I had the chance to spend days, I'm going to say something like 9 or 10 days in the field with them, literally putting eyes on every single building in the park for one reason or another, for if they were housing units or if they were administrative cabin sites or whatever, maybe a fish house or something, but just some condition assessment work and a number of things that we were working on. But it was really just incredible to be able to be out in the park that much, and that's atypical. I would say, my job is largely in the office or maybe out on a dock meeting with folks, but to be able to get out and see so much in kind of a compressed time period was really useful, and I know will serve me well in the future when people are talking about such and such a place. I now have at least a mental image of what that was. So
Yeah.
it was really a great way to kick off the season for me.
Denice, did that tour include the Rock of Ages lighthouse?
Oh, it did not. We did not go in any of the lighthouses, but
Let's go.
Tell you, I got to see some photos of all the work at the Rock of Ages Lighthouse and the great work that's been going on there. And I did get to poke my head in the building. I'm going to forget I think it's on Washington Island, not Barnum, where the folks that are the Preservation Society folks are working out of, and they have just done some beautiful work. And so I haven't physically been in it yet, but
It will come.
Yes.
I've at least seen some photos. Yeah.
All right.
We'll make a date. This was wonderful.
Yeah, Denice, thank you so much for your time today. It's good to talk with you again. It sounds like it was quite a season, and now you get ready for winter and you move forward, and best of luck with the winter and everything making its way through. And I certainly hope we get a chance to chat with you again soon.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Thank you both.
That's Denice Swanke, who is superintendent of Isle Royale National Park. And Frida, it's really cool. We're talking with her about everything with this season and kind of in a way, a baptism by fire or ice water or something, because it started with falling into Lake Superior.
My goodness.
Then you got great weather and lots of visitors. And then, of course, the challenge of the Horn Fire and all of the projects going on. That's a heck of a way to kind of start at the gig, wouldn't you say?
Oh, man. Yep. She said that when she came here from Denali, she said she wasn't done with winter anymore. So, she's a tough chick already. I think we always tease about, Uper chick, she can't complain till the bone pokes through the skin. And Denice is right there with it and what she's had to deal with. But I think most important, we've got time now, and hopefully anybody listening that says, yes, I want to book that trip to Isle Royale next year.
Start doing it now.
Prepare for it.
And get ready for it.
Yeah, you're not going to be in an easy walking place. It's a beautiful, amazing place, but you have to prepare.
And that's a good way to leave it right there. We certainly appreciate you joining us today for the Lake Superior podcast. Good to be back in the chairs and doing it again. We've got a whole season unfolding, and you'll be hearing more about it as it plugs along, thanks to the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation. I'm Walt Lindala.
I'm Frida Waara.
Thanks for listening to the Lake Superior podcast.
The National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation, NPLSF, is the only official nonprofit 501c3 fundraising partner of the National Park Service for all 5 U.S. national park sites on Lake Superior.
To learn more about NPLSF projects and programs, you can visit the website at nplsf.org or friend them on Facebook.
I'm Frida Waara.
And I'm Walt Lindala. Thanks for listening to the Lake Superior Podcast.
This podcast made possible with the support of the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation and Media Brew Communications.
This episode brought to you by Cafe Imports, Minneapolis-based importers of fine specialty green coffees. Independently owned and operated since 1993, Cafe Imports has been dedicated to decreasing its impact on the earth through renewable energy, carbon neutrality, and by supporting conservational efforts in places where quality coffee is grown and also where quality coffee is consumed. Where does your coffee come from?